Hello guys, welcome to this episode of the Ukraine-Russia war. We want to explore how this fighting, especially on the Eastern Front, is progressing. It's been many days. Fighting has been continuing from the south, from the east, from the north, but recently fighting has been concentrated around the Donbas region to the east. And let's see how fighting has been progressing in the last 48 hours or so. Then we'll be giving each other some updates here. If there are any changes, we'll be looking at that. Let's get into the updates for today. So as we can see further down, Russia has managed to cut across the defensive lines of the Ukrainian forces and managed to capture the road H20. And what does this mean? It means Ukrainian forces can no longer effectively use this road H20 to take their supplies from the south to the north and also to allow their forces to move from the north going to the south. This bridge is very dangerous. Why? Because one, the supply line is cut off. That will lead to Ukraine looking for another alternative. Of course, we know that Ukraine might have to use the H32 highway, but it is a little bit far. It will not get to the area around Bruha, where fighting is very intense. So for Ukrainian forces to use the marshy fields, it's a little bit of a challenge because it slows down their movement. So for Russia to gain control of this H20 highway, it's an advantage to them because now they have options to attack along the highway going further, to set their camp and just disturb the movement of the Ukrainian forces as they focus on attacking around Lysychansk. And as we know that Popasna has been captured by the Russian forces and they have managed to set up their artillery on the higher ground. The Russian forces now have advantage of attacking any of the Ukrainian force setups along the defensive lines because they are on the low ground. This is another disadvantage, and we can see that each and every passing day Russia is breaching the defensive lines of the Ukrainian forces and pushing further westwards. Those small and incremental gains by Russia are very dangerous because it takes time for Ukraine. As they retreat, they need to set up new defensive lines and also to counter. But the breach along this H20 highway may not mean much for the Russian forces because, as we know, this area are mostly farmlands, and for them to be for a long time around this area, which means their artillery is exposed to Ukrainian drones and they can be attacked. We know Ukrainian drones are more effective, very effective in taking out Russian tanks, and it has been happening for a long time, and Russia has lost so many tanks and service members from drones, and it is really a bad thing for Russia. Further south, we can see there's nothing much happening further south. There's nothing much happening further south because the major battle is to the east, and where Russia is fighting to encircle the Ukrainian troops around this enclave. And this fighting will take a long time because Ukrainian forces are concentrated around this area. And as we have heard that Ukraine has enmassed its service members around Lysychansk, so it means it's difficult for Russia to just walk through and break the defensive lines. Also, there are main settlements along this defensive line which Russia has to pass through. So the number of obstacles for Russia are big. But further south, there are some isolated bombardments that we can see. But these isolated bombardments, we know Russia is good at the fixing tactic, just hitting isolated targets so that Ukraine can keep its forces on guard while they focus on their key targets. So these bombardments further south and somewhere around north, they are just isolated fixing tactic by the Russian forces. But we just wait to see how the battle will go along Lysychansk, because that's where the main battle is. Popasna is gone to the Russian side, and they are attacking. They want to cut off along this area, then encircle the Ukrainian troops. But if this happens, that will be really bad news for Ukraine, because they will have to find a way out, either to attack or to surrender, like what happened in Mariupol. But as far as the battle is concerned right now, the Ukrainian forces are holding the Russians at bay. Yes, every day, each and passing day, Russia is gaining small ground, breaches along the defensive lines. Those breaches are very worrisome, because if they continue over and over and over again, then we might see an encirclement for the Ukrainian forces, or even mass surrendering for the Ukrainian forces. So the Ukrainian forces need to be brave. They need to continue fighting. But if Russia wants to do some big progress here along this defensive line, along this battle line, they need to find better ways to fight from all directions, from the north, from the south, from the east, and push to cut off along this line, and also encircle. It also be able to maintain, because Ukraine has more than 10,000 servicemen around Lysychansk. So it's a heavy battalion, it's a heavy group. That's a very fortified defensive line, and it's difficult to break through. So we'll keep watching how this battle will go, but it's really bloody. It's very bad. And maybe we just hope an amicable solution will be found anytime soon, so that no more casualties will be experienced. But as of now, there is no sign of a break-even in terms of talks. So fighting is the only way to go for both sides. Please subscribe, like the video, to push it so that the channel can grow, and we'll be giving each other updates here and there over and over again as the battle continues. We will be seeing how the battle will be progressing, but we just wish peace can be restored anytime soon. Okay, thank you guys. Meet you in the next update.